philosopher asks the question, what is truth? We need to know what would count as a satisfactory answer. The two philosophers you're now going to hear are looking for an answer which will do at least two things. First, it must show what all true statements have in common. The reason why we want to know this is because we want to explain why it is that we apply the same word, true, to many different kinds of statements. We want to show how all true statements resemble each other. But if we want to give a complete account of this, we also need to show how different kinds of true statement are related to each other. And this is the second thing that we demand of a satisfactory account of truth. We want to show both how true statements resemble each other and how they differ. Here now to discuss such an account of truth are P.F. Strawson of Magdalen College, Oxford, and Gareth Evans of University College, Oxford.
Well, some 50 years ago, as you know, of course, Frank Ramsey said that there was no serious problem about the general nature of truth, though, of course, there were problems about the nature of statement or assertion and the nature of belief. I think, in spite of all that's happened in the intervening time, I think Ramsey was right. The question what it is for a statement to be true or a belief to be true really admits of a simple answer, and the answer is this, that a statement is true if and only if things are as one who makes that statement thereby states them to be. And a belief is true if and only if things are as one who holds that belief thereby believes them to be. Now this rather trivial sounding formula has two great merits. For one thing, it admits of as many specific applications as you please. And again, on the other hand, it makes the point which Austin, I think, expressed by saying it takes two to make a truth. For example, suppose someone says or believes that Caesar was bald. Then what he says or what he believes is true if and only if Caesar was indeed bald. And here we have this twofold reference on the one hand to a believing or a saying, and on the other hand to that in the world which the statement is about or the belief is about. This twofold reference to the thought on the one hand and the world on the other, and any adequate account of truth must allow for that. Now, as I said at the beginning, Ramsey did acknowledge that there were plenty of problems in the vicinity which weren't so simply dealt with, and one of these was the problem of the nature of assertion. And I suppose one might regard current investigations into systematic semantics as an attack on this problem. That's to say, this is an investigation into the nature of those linguistic conventions in virtue of mastery of which we're able to say and to understand the true or false things that we do say or understand. Now, what I regard as misleading is to call the outcome of these investigations a definition of truth, as is fashionably done. For example, if somebody comes up with systematic semantics for English, which nobody, of course, has in fact yet done, then it would be in this fashion to say that he's defined truth for English, or defined true in English. But of course, there isn't one concept of truth for English, another for French, another for Swahili, and so on. There's just truth. If the semantic theorist is to be said to have defined anything, then I think it would be better to say that he's defined English rather than that he's defined truth.
Well, I think on their behalf, I would concede that. It seems to me that the concept of truth has an application across languages. It has a wider range of extension than any of the terms they define. I wonder, perhaps slightly parenthetically, I wonder whether one can't, however, get some illumination from their ideas, from a Tarskian style treatment, by trying to identify grammatical categories which are common to many languages, such as name and predicate, conjunction, negation, and so on, and try and divine truth recursively, something along the following lines. One might say you take the basic set of sentences, which will be, let us say, names coupled with predicates, and we say that such a sentence of this kind is true if the item named by the name satisfies the predicate or the predicate applies to it. And then, for more complicated sentences, say a negation, a sentence which consists of another sentence with a negation sign, is true just in case that other sentence is not true, and so on with conjunction and the other devices of sentential composition. I mean, it must be said that such a general application of this idea relies upon a primitive notion of naming, as I used it, and of satisfaction of predicates. But don't you think it gives us some illumination?
Well, look, I think it's an improvement on the language relative notion of truth. But I still think that the concept of truth has a generality which transcends, which goes beyond this typology of statement forms just as much as it transcends differences of language. However, I think in my turn I might make a concessive move here and say that that title, Theory of Truth, might well be allowed to include under it this sort of investigation of general statement forms common to all languages and their relations. And I think this for two reasons. First of all, it seems clear that if it were not for language and the variety of statement forms that make up all languages, if it were not for language, truth really wouldn't amount to very much, and indeed nor would thought amount to very much. And the other reason, it's more frivolous one perhaps, is that after all we have this grand title, Theory of Truth, and it seems rather pity to confine it to the rather insubstantial Ramseyan formula.
Well, very well, let's look at the possibility. We both agree we want a general account of truth, and let's look as if this Ramsey formula, that's to say the formula, he said something true just in case things are as he stated them to be, does in fact capture this. Now, it seems to me there is a thin interpretation of this formula which does. We understand this idea of things being in the world as someone states them to be as a sort of general statement which we understand from many particular instances of the following form. He said that snow is white and snow is white. He said that grass is green and grass is green, i.e. we understand that so long as there is a filling that we can put he said that P and P in that schema and to yield a truth, things are as he stated them to be. And that seems to me what I shall call the thin interpretation. That formula does seem to me that's utterly general. But there is a more substantial interpretation, which I can call the realist interpretation, which puts more weight upon the idea of things in the world being in thus and such a condition. And it seems that if we do put a weight on that, it might not have the generality. The formula might not have the generality that it ought to have.
Could you say a bit more what you have in mind?
Well, of course, this idea of things in the world being in thus and such a condition is not the most perspicuous of notions. I mean, is it, one might ask, perhaps the distribution of elementary particles and their organization and location and so on? But insofar as one has a grip upon the idea, it seems difficult to find things in the world which would make, say, mathematical statements true, or maybe some logical truths true. It seems that these moral statements too. The mathematical statements are difficult because it doesn't seem that there are things whose relations and dispositions make 2 and 2 plus 4 true. 2 and 2 plus 2 equals 4 true. And in the case of, say, a moral statement, John ought to look after his mother, it isn't that there's any lack of things. John and his mother are certainly there, but it's difficult to see in virtue of what relationship, if one takes a realistic idea of this, in virtue of what relation they must stand for the statement to be true.
Well, two things here. First, you raised the question about the condition of things in the world, or facts about the world. Just how extensive is this? And you mentioned the relation of elementary particles. Well, I think we can construe it a little, indeed a great deal more broadly than that. I think it might be allowed to cover facts about the disposition and relation of gross bodies, of ordinary physical bodies, facts about their sensible qualities. We have facts about people's states of mind. We have facts about social institutions and the rules that are accepted in them or that constitute them, and the degree to which people's behavior represents compliance with these rules and failure to comply with them. We really have an enormous range of types of fact which fairly clearly fall under the rubric facts about the world, or statements or descriptions of how things are in the world, this crucial phrase. However, I must concede that though we can make this a very extensive range of facts, it's not so easy to include in it mathematical facts, as we to call them, or the facts, if that's the right word, expressed by moral judgments. But isn't it worth remarking that philosophers, precisely sensitive to the importance in this connection of the notion of condition of things in the world, or facts about the world, have been prone to reclassify mathematical formulae and moral judgments, to refrain from calling them statements in the strict sense, true or false in the strict sense, have been inclined to reclassify them, to count, say, moral judgments, to assimilate them to imperatives, as Professor Hare notably does, and to treat mathematical formulae, logical truths perhaps, with rules, to assimilate those to rules.
Yes, but their propensity to do this illustrates, it seems to me, the power of this connection, the connection between truth and things in the world having to be in such and such condition. But, I mean, this does seem to me an unacceptable consequence, that we deprive these of appropriate bearers of truth and falsity, and they're not statements. And, I mean, I do put it as a virtue of this very thin interpretation of the Ramsey formula that each of these fit. I mean, he said that 2 + 2 = 4, and 2 + 2 does indeed equal 4.